Right guys, welcome back to the channel, and of course it is Tyranid Codex time. Interestingly enough, I didn't start doing the Codex reviews until after the Tyranid Codex came out. So today I have a very special guest with me. I've got James Jones, one of my Patreons. So welcome to the channel, James.
Pleasure to be here, Harry, and hello everyone.
And of course, with it being Tyranids, James plays High Fleet Kraken mainly. And I did have the opportunity to meet up with him at Warhammer World. Unfortunately, we didn't get to film the game, but nevertheless, it was a pleasure to finally meet James. And of course, we're going to go over the whole Codex, unit by unit, of course, High Fleet, pick out some synergies, whilst obviously showing some beautiful Tyranid models. Before we go any further, if you would like to support the channel via Patreon for early access to battle reports, and you can get access to Patreon only live streams that I'm doing, as well as up-to-date pictures as to what I'm currently working on. All the money goes straight back into the channel for newer Codex. James very kindly made a donation via Super Chat to help get me one of the new Imperial Knights, so thank you very much for that, James.
No problem at all. It's a very impressive model, and it's been a joy seeing you use them on the channel. Yeah, very good job on the paint job.
Cool, thank you very much indeed. So, without further ado, we're going to start with the basic Tyranid rules. Not, of course, the High Fleet adaptions, just simply what you get for being a Tyranid.
Yeah, so we'll start with the keywords. So, all Tyranids have the High Fleet keyword. And basically what that means is it will replace things like Kraken or Behemoth, and depending on what High Fleet it is, it will change your core rules. Now, they've also got another one called Synapse. Now, it's so big in 8th edition because I think morale is a big part of the game.
It is. There's so many ways to kind of get around morale and make armies feel this. That the armies that do have leadership debuffs, I feel, really suffer, and I think especially against Tyranids, it's so hard to force Tyranids to feel a morale.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with this book is a lot of the Synapse units got a hell of a lot cheaper from the previous edition. So we're in a situation that we've never been in before, where we can just go, all right, here's a 60-point unit, and it will just give us a nice big bubble of Synapse for virtually no cost. Yeah.
So basically it means that they automatically pass morale. Now, if you've obviously got a big unit of 30 gaunts, what are the leadership 5, 6, if that?
Yeah. Termagants and Hormagaunts are leadership 5.
So obviously you kill 5 of them, you're losing D6 straight away. But if you're within Synapse, which means you're not spending them 2 command points to not run away either.
Yep. Now every Tyranid unit that has the Synapse ability has a Synapse bubble of 12 inches.
Which actually increased from the index. In the index it was only 8 inches.
Yeah. And better yet, the Hive Tyrants have a Synapse bubble of 18 inches.
Yeah. Which is nuts, because I mean, I know obviously competitively you're not going to be taking more than 3 now because of the beta rule of 3. But even then, with 2 Hive Tyrants, and you're going to have other Synapse creatures, you're going to have your board covered.
Yeah. 2 big 18-inch bubbles is pretty easy to keep your army within that. And the way it's worded is you only need one of your models from the unit to be in that bubble.
Yeah, because it's not wholly within, like a lot of the rules for Sigmar especially are changing to, it's just within. Now, of course, Synapse does keep the little Gribblies in check with instinctive behaviour. Now, for people who played Tyranid in 7th edition, if you were outside of Synapse, instinctive behaviour was a big thing. Gaunts would run to cover, sometimes they would eat themselves. There was all sorts of detriments to being outside of Synapse. But in 8th edition, it's really not that bad at all.
No, it's such a minute problem. I don't think it's ever been a hassle for me when I've been out of Synapse.
No, so basically you subtract 1 from hit rolls.
Instinctive behaviour, as it's written in the book. It says, unless a High Fleet unit with this ability is within 24 inches of a friendly high fleet synapse unit, you must subtract 1 from any hit rolls made for it while it's shooting any target other than the nearest visible enemy unit. So if you don't target the closest unit, it's -1 to hit in shooting. Also, you must subtract 2 from its charge roll if it declares a charge against any other unit than the nearest enemy unit.
So really, you don't even have to be in synapse range. It's 24 inches, which is just, it's nuts. I feel that there's no downside to that realistically, because it's going to come up so rare that it's not really going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's such a minor inconvenience. You barely notice it. I mean, 7th was a killer. Instinctive behaviour was an absolute killer.
Yeah. Then they've also got Shadow in the Warp. Enemy Psychers must subtract 1 from any psychic tests that they make whilst within 18 inches of a Tyranid Psyker. Oh, sorry. No, Shadow in the Warp. I've read that totally wrong. Must subtract 1 from psychic tests that make if they are within 18 inches of any units with this ability. But Tyranid Psychers are not affected. Note it says Tyranid Psychers, which also means enemy Tyranids.
It also means as well Gene Stealer cults.
Yes, because they'll have the Tyranid keyword as well.
So if you're playing against another Tyranids or a Gene Stealer cult, Shadow in the Warp will not affect them whatsoever.
But it is a very handy power because it just makes, for example, Null Zone or Death Hex from Chaos or Marines just that little bit harder to cast as well.
There's been many times playing against, Craft Worlds, Grey Knights, Chaos, Imperium, where that -1 has been such a huge difference between them casting such brutal powers like Doom and Guide and Vortex of Doom and Death Hex.
Yeah.
There's been a few times where they've rolled under by 1, so they would have got it if Shadow in the Warp wasn't an effect. And it's one of those passive abilities in Tyranids that when you play them over time, you do come to appreciate them. It also makes denying them easier.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously if you need subtract 1 from the roll, if they roll an 8, it counts as a 7, which means you only need the 8 to stop it.
Yeah, whereas normally you would have needed a 9. So it cuts both ways, and it is such a useful ability.
Now, if we take a look at the high fleets, obviously Synapse and stuff only affect units of the same high fleet, obviously swapping out the keyword. There is a specific psychic hunting high fleet, which I did try against Stu a while ago with Magnus and the Thousand Suns, but I couldn't quite get it off. It was still very situational. But nevertheless, we have a grand total of 7 different high fleets, massively different, and very much dictate the way that you would build your army. And that's one thing I've noticed about 8th edition, though, James, is yes, you may see very similar builds competitively at the top, but because of the vast variety, you don't see the same list that often, especially if you just go to clubs and playing your mates and stuff. Lists, even if you play Tyranids, 7, 8, 9 times in a row, chances are you are going to get different lists every time.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's a set number of data slates in this codex, just something simple like having a different high fleet totally changes the way a certain unit can be played.
Yeah.
And that really adds to the depth of the book, because if you look at other codexes, it's like, yeah, they'll have a couple of good traits, but the rest are usually garbage. I mean, that's the consensus I've come away with from, people who collect Imperium.
The Tau one, for example, everybody runs Tau Sept and occasionally Borkan for the extra 6-inch range. You'd not see in any of the others. With Eldar, you see a Leotok. What's the one that Lawrence runs? Ulthway.
Ulthway, yeah.
and you see Sam Han jet bikes, but that's it. Everyone's running Ulthway and a Laytok.
But there was one where it's like they reckon they should have swapped Ulthway with another one, and that would have been a better fit.
I think it was Iandon.
I think it was a Yandon, yeah.
Yeah, if they'd been the other way around. Anyway, Dark Codex review will be coming when Sean is back from working away, and I've pinned up a couple of more models to show you guys. That will be coming. But nevertheless, High Fleet adaptions. So
I can only off the top of my head, I only think there's one that's poor, a couple of mediocre ones, and they've got quite a few really good ones. So I think they've done quite well compared to other codexes in terms of the traits that they have available.
Yeah, definitely. So Behemoth is the first one. You can reroll field charges for units with this adaptation.
Yeah, it's short and simple, but also very effective if you've got an Alpha Strike type of army. It's not to be underestimated, that ability.
Couple that with, is it Adrenaline Glands to get the +1 charge?
+1 to the charge, yeah. So you've essentially got a lot of units that can charge in on an 8 re-rolling.
Yeah, and that's obviously deep striking from 9 inches away. But that obviously dictates massively, first of all, how you are going to build your army. You're going to have very little shooting in this army. You're going to have very fast moving things to get straight in your face. Carnifexes, Trigons, Morlocks. Well, not so much the Morlock, but Gaunts
Raveners
as well. Raveners, yeah. So that's the type of models that you're going to see in that army, I think. I don't see...
And also Combat Florence as well.
Yes.
It's very good in that.
Absolutely. I don't think you'll see many Datrefexes. I don't think you'll see Tyrannofexes, Exocrines and stuff. Maybe one or two as backup support, but people are going to build this list to be in your face and in combat.
Yeah, it's definitely... This is the Alpha Strike sort of trait. So people who love that style of play, yeah. I would recommend Behemoth as their go-to. I've tried it a few times. It's good fun to play.
Yeah. The next one is, of course, your favourite, Kraken. When a unit from this adaptation advances, roll 3 dice instead of 1 and pick the highest to add to the move characteristic. In addition, these units can fall back and charge in the same turn.
That is, to me, is so big.
Yeah.
Because it just makes your entire army so much more faster. I mean... I say to people that haven't really played Kraken, you can't understand how much of a difference it makes until you actually use that trait.
Absolutely.
I think if you like close combat nids, I think overall they're the best trait to have for sort of like an overall sort of combat list. Obviously, Behemoth has the advantage with Alpha Striking, but I think the being able to fall back and charge again, once you get to their lines, you can literally tie up their whole army so easy.
It's incredibly handy. I mean, I pulled it against Ian with 30 Hormagaunts. I wrapped a Redemptor Dreadnought so he couldn't go out of combat, and it was just like, oh, I'm going to retreat and now charge your scouts that are on that objective, which will actually get me that point.
Yeah, so useful.
Yeah, and because obviously the Redemptor has 4 attacks, I think if he got lucky, he was killing 4 Gaunts a turn.
That's even more funny. That's even more funny if you do that with Termagants and you've got a Termagon sitting back there.
Yeah, just respawning them.
You've basically taken 120 points to disable. How much is a Redemptor?
250-ish.
Yeah. So it's like you've won on that trade-off. You've basically taken that unit out of the game.
Yeah. The next one is Leviathan, young Philip's favourite. Roll a d6 each time a unit with this adaptation loses a wound, whilst it is within 6 inches of a friendly Synapse creature of the same high fleet. On a 6, the damage is ignored. The unit does not lose a wound. Ignore this adaptation on a unit that is currently affected by the Catalyst power, because people were stacking the Tenacious Survivor Warlord trait before, so it was essentially giving you a 5-up, 6-up.
I think in the index there were some units that had a 6-up for no pain inherently.
Yeah.
And then they get the Warlord trait for 6-up for no pain, so they were like double stacking it.
Yeah,
So
Iron Hands were doing it as well, but it got FAQ'd, so you can't do that anymore. But nevertheless, a lot of people think this is a bit, meh, it's not great. But honestly, right, with how hot Phil rolls, the amount of times that this has actually saved him is unbelievable.
See, for me, I don't see this as a poor trait, because with Tyranids, you have so many wounds on the table for your points. You usually outnumber your opponent in terms of wounds when you usually look at a Tyranid army, because they just seem to get more wounds than other armies for a similar amount of points. So because you have so many extra wounds, that 6-up feel no pain does actually come into its own. It just makes your entire army 16.5% more durable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great, well-rounded one. And from what I remember, but bear in mind the Tyranid Codex has been out for quite a while, when they were leaking these, Phil saw them was like, oh, because his whole army was Leviathan. But then he thought, no, you know what? I love Leviathan. I'm sticking with it. And he stuck with it. And it works for him because Phil, he changes the way he plays, very much like Leviathan does. He adapts. He runs so many different varied lists and he's not frightened to try stuff out. And with Leviathan, you can do literally that. You can versatile your list and still get your trait no matter what units you take.
Yeah, it's the most forgiving of the traits in terms of how you want to play your army. So if you want a shooty army, yeah, it will still work. If you want a combat army, it will still work. Or if you want mixed,
yeah,
that still works.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think a lot of people look at it and go, nah, but it is very good because of the versatility.
I mean, it's exactly the same as Power Through Pain that Dark Eldar get. And I find that to be so useful when I'm playing against it.
Definitely, definitely. So the next one is Gorgon, Adaptive Toxins. You can reroll wound rolls of a 1 for the fight phase, in the fight phase for units with this adaptation. That's great.
I really want to like this trait because on paper, it's a very good ability to have.
But you've got to get there.
You've got to get there, yeah. Like with Behemoth, it helps you get there because you get a reroll. With Kraken, it helps you get there because you're rolling 3 dice to advance. Gorgon, I can only see him being really useful on stuff like Trigons and Gene Stealers, if I'm honest.
I mean, you can still build the list well because obviously there's ways and means to make units run and charge. Obviously, Gene Stealers can, but then you could also use, is it Onslaught, one of the sighted powers? For example, imagine that on a unit of Gaunts on Hormigans, more than 20. I think you get an extra attack if they're more than 20. And obviously
that's Gene Stealers get the extra attack if there's more than 10. With Hormigans, it is reroll 1s to wound anyway.
Oh, right, fair enough.
So the Gorgon Adaptive Toxins doesn't really benefit Hormigans unless the unit's lower than 20.
Yeah, I think that one is probably the worst out of all of them, and it's not bad. It's just it's not good.
Yeah, I think it needed something additional to help it get there.
Definitely. The next one.
That's one I'm using a lot lately, actually. Jormungandr.
Yes, he said it right. So a unit with this adaptation has the benefit of cover for the purposes of shooting attacks. If it advances or charges, however, it loses the benefit of the adaptation until the start of the next movement phase. So notice this is advances or charges. You can still move.
Also, it excludes those with the fly keyword as well.
That kind of sucks. So what's that? Gargoyles, Malanthropes, Zoanthropes.
Malanthropes it is on a big deal on because they can't be targeted most of the time anyway.
True. Gargoyles it does, but then again, no one's using gargoyles at the minute.
And I think the Zoanthropes armor save is 5-up, so their inborn's always better anyway.
Fair enough. I think the only other one I can think of is Venomthropes, but
yeah, no one takes them anyway.
Phil does.
Okay, some people take them.
It's Phil though. Like I said, he literally takes whatever he fancies.
You've got two units that do the same thing, but one just does it better.
Again, I think it's cool, but it's like Dalith with Tau. No one takes it because the others are just better.
See, the true strength from Jormungandr is actually to do with its stratagem.
Right.
And we'll definitely go into more detail on that with when we cover the stratagems.
Cool.
But Jormungandr in deployment has the most tricks up its sleeve. So
right.
It's a fairly useful trait. Something you get straight from the off. And like Leviathan, 6 up, feel no pain is equivalent to +1 to your armor. It's about, in terms of durability, it's an extra 16.5% durability to your armor.
Yeah.
So it's quite useful, but it's got some tricks up its sleeve, all right. It's one I use quite often if I'm not using Kraken.
Cool.
The next one is Hydra.
Yep.
Swarming in.
Sorry, you go on.
Yeah, Hydra, the swarming instincts. You can reroll hit rolls in the fight phase for units with this adaptation that target units containing fewer models than their own. So this one is the classic, I love a big giant horde of gaunts and gene stealers and I'm just going to run at you.
Yeah.
I've never actually tried this one because I don't quite feel I have enough gaunts.
See, I should try it because I've got 30 Gene Stealers and 60 Hormigants, and I've got Gargoyles and Termagants as well. So I feel I should give this a go at some point because I've always ran more Swarms than Phil used to. Phil always went Nidzilla. I think I could run this one.
It's even useful for Raveners and Tyranid Warriors if you're going against something elite like Marines or Deathwatch.
Yeah.
I mean, the average size of a Marine squad is usually 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maximum size on a Ravener and Warrior squad is 9. So it's a trait that can even benefit them.
Definitely.
However, the weakness to this trait is it does absolutely nothing for your big guys.
No. Not a thing. And that cuts out half, well, probably more than half of the army.
I think the big guys should have had something not quite as powerful as reroll or hits.
Reroll ones.
Yeah, reroll ones. But something. I feel that's where Hydra could have been better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very fluffy, and that's what I like about it. I just don't have enough models to I think have success with that one.
The next one is probably my favourite. Now I like this one, and I changed the way I played Tyranids.
It's my second favourite. It's my second favourite of the lot.
Yeah.
When I'm playing competitively, where I'm doing like local tournaments, I will always do a combination of Kraken and Kronos.
Because why not? Why would you not? If you want the backline artillery, you would always go Kronos. If you want the hyper-aggressive in your face, you would always go Kraken.
See, I've always been quite balanced in terms of my game approach. I think you need a bit of combat and a bit of shooting.
Yeah.
And I try and sort of hit the middle ground with Kraken and Kronos, and I've had a lot of success with it.
I mean,
doing that combination.
Realistically, right, you could always, a spearhead of Kronos is absolutely fantastic. So re-rolling ones for units if they don't move. Now, that doubles up with the Exocrine and the Terran effects, because if they don't move, they get to shoot again, and the Exocrine gets +1 to hit.
Another honourable mention as well for this Kronos trait as well, which I think the best unit in Kronos is Hive Guard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I won 3 more because I've only got 3. Phil started running units of 6, and he takes them in Leviathan, obviously, but Hive Guard is so good.
And my first ever competitive tournament that I did in March, I played Custodes, and my Hive Warriors just took them apart. They literally single-handedly won me the game. Like, my other units were struggling to sort of remove them. It was like the jet bike spam list.
Yeah.
And whenever the Hive Guard shot, a unit would just disappear. Very good in Kronos.
Yeah, definitely. So, that is obviously the Hive Fleet adaptions. We'll take a look at some of the stratagems, and then we'll move on to the Psychic Powers, Warlord traits, and relics. So, a lot of the stratagems are sort of cut and paste with other codexes, obviously renamed and reworded to be the Tyranid equivalent. So, a lot of them, to be honest, we don't really need to explain that much, so we'll just mention which ones work with other things. So, for example, we've got Bounty of the Hive Fleet, take an extra artifact for a command point, or 2 extra artifacts for 3 command points.
And then we've got the Psychic Barrage, which is basically like the... it's when you have 3 of a heavy support, but in this case you have 3 Zoanthrope units. And it pretty much does the same thing. It does a mortal wound barrage. It's a very poorly designed stratagem, if you ask me.
Yeah, you need what? Right there.
You need
a unit of Zoanthropes that has at least 3 models has to be within 6 inches of at least 2 other such units. You need a minimum of 9 Zoanthropes to do this, and if you've got 9 Zoanthropes on the board, somebody is shooting them.
That's also very cost intensive. That's 9 times 40 points.
Yeah.
That's 360 points just to make a stratagem viable.
But obviously you could argue the same with kill shot for predators.
See, the thing is predators hit harder.
They do, absolutely. So what happens here? So pick a point. Roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe within 3 inches of that point. Add 1 to the result if the unit has 10 or more models. On a 4+, it suffers 3d3 mortal wounds. There's a potential for 3 damage. There's a potential for 9 damage after a 50-50 roll.
Also, as well, it gets worse. If it's a character in that within one of those points, subtract 1, so 5s. Yeah. So, okay. You want me to sink 360 points to be able to even use this stratagem, then it's down to a 50-50 or 33% if it's a character. No, thank you. It's just not worth it. And then if you go second, if even one of those Zoanthropes dies, you're out. You can't use it. I think it's a very poorly designed stratagem.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the nature of Zoanthropes, say, compared to a Predator, you could still use kill shot if that predator still had 1 wound.
Yeah.
So with Zoanthropes, they've got 3 wounds each. So all you need to do is take 3 wounds off 1 unit, and it's no good.
Yeah.
So I think vehicles that have a very similar worded stratagem have an advantage there.
100%. 100%.
So it's a stratagem that, to be honest, I have never used.
No.
looks good at first glance, but when you dig a bit deeper, it's not very efficient.
No. So the next one that we've got is Caustic Blood. Use the stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Whenever a model is destroyed in the phase, roll a dice, and on each roll of a 6, the enemy unit that inflicted the final wound suffers a mortal wound after all attacks have been resolved. Very good for massive hordes like Hormigans.
Yeah, even works on termagants as well. It's one of those stratagems that you will use every now and then, and it doesn't even matter what Hive Fleet you're playing. You should be playing at least a couple of big units of termagants if you're playing Tyranids. And it's very useful because if they charge something in, like Assault Marines, for example, or Death Company, and you're like, yeah, I know for a fact all 30 are going to die, you just go, all right, I'll pop this stratagem. You should see on average, what?
5 or 6 wounds.
5 or 6 mortal wounds convert through. Now that could take 2/3 of the unit out that attacks you back.
Yeah.
So it's very good. It is very good.
Next one is rapid regeneration. Basically, heal D3 wounds. I think it's handy, but heal D3, you could roll a 1 for 2 command points.
Where it gets really handy is if you only need 1 wound more to get above a bracket.
Yeah.
To get in the middle bracket or the top bracket. So it is useful. You will use it every now and then. I certainly do.
I think for things like Exocrines or Hive Towns, you want them to be on that extra +1 to hit. Then in that situation, if you know you only need 1, maybe 2 wounds to get there, absolutely 100%.
Also, well, it states you have to use that at the end of the movement phase.
Right. So you would actually get the reduced movement, then increase your ballistic skill if you went up to the next bracket.
Yeah. So sometimes you could make an honest mistake of doing it at the start of the movement phase to get the extra movement, but that would be incorrect. You have to do it at the end. So there are pros and cons to it. If you use it wisely, it's definitely worth the 2 CP.
Yeah. Next one, Scorch Bugs, and I'm guilty of getting this wrong. So use this stratagem when a Tyranid unit from your army is selected to attack in the shooting phase. You can add 1 to wound rolls made for Flesh Borer or Flesh Borer Hive. If you've got a lot of Gaunt, so you've got the Tyrann effects with the Flesh Borer Hive, great.
Yeah, I mean, you will mostly have use this stratagem on the regular Flesh Borers on the Gaunts, because that's what they come stock with.
Yeah. Wounded Marines on 3s.
Yeah, and if your unit's 20 or more, re-rolling 1s to wound.
And then, of course, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s if the Turbogon is nearby.
You've suddenly got a half-decent little infantry remover there.
Definitely. I was going to say honourable mention to Devourers. Obviously, they're only strength 4, but, take 20 in a unit of 30, have the 10 Flesh Borers for chaff. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s, wounding on 4s or 5s, even re-rolling 1s is massively powerful with 3 shots each.
Yeah, the Scorch Bugs unfortunately doesn't affect the Devourers. I would absolutely love it if there was something like that for Devourers, but I think it would be very, very overpowered.
Yeah. So next up is Feeder Tendrils. If a Gene Stealer, Lictor, Toxicrene, or Venom Throat from your army kills a character, gain D3 command points. There is absolutely no reason not to do this. It costs 1 command point. You lose nothing.
Yeah, you at worst case scenario, you will gain nothing, but you won't lose anything. So it's always worth a punt.
Yeah.
And it is the only way Tyranids can command point farm.
Yeah. Which also means once per phase, because the Toxicrene could kill 1. No, it says in the fight phase, so it's only once per turn as well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the way the rules are written.
Yeah. Implant Attack uses stratagem when a Tyranid unit from your army fights in the fight phase. Roll a dice for each enemy model, other than a vehicle, that is wounded but not slain, and on a 2+ it suffers a mortal wound. I don't get this right. Because unless you are attacking multiple units with one of your units, you're doing a single mortal wound if you don't kill 1 model, because wounds can only be allocated to 1 model.
Yeah, this is a really strange one. I've actually pulled this off a couple of times. I multi-charge with Gene Stealers into 3 different primary squads.
Yeah.
And after I've resolved all my attacks, 1 primary squad was wiped out, and there was two left, and there was a model in each squad that had 1 wound left.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? For 1 CP, I'll kill 2 primaries.
Definitely. Very, very situational, but handy.
It's extremely situational, but don't forget this one is there. Also, as well, it could be very useful if you're going against a character, say like a captain or an archon, something really annoying, and you get it down to 1 wound. You can just go, no, you're gone, and you can stratagem. You can make sure you get rid of it.
The next one is where your manoeuvrability is for non-Kraken and Behemoth armies. But there is a penalty to it. Metabolic Overdrive. Use this stratagem. After moving a Tyranid unit from your army, you can make a second move with that unit, including advancing, if you wish. When you do so, you must roll a dice for each model in the unit, and on the roll of a 1, inflict a mortal wound on the unit. This unit cannot shoot or make a charge move this turn.
Very useful, especially when you're playing objective-based games.
Or you want to run away.
Or you want to run away, yeah. It does make the world of a difference, and this is one I use every now and then. But it's also still very useful in Behemoth and Kraken, because what you can do is say, okay, I'm advancing this unit forward, and it can't charge this turn. So what I can do is Metabolic Overdrive it and get it into position so it's guaranteed to get the charge off the following turn. This one's really useful on your monsters like your Toxicreens or your Carnifexes, Trigons that you just want to get up the table really fast, and it will put the attention on your monsters rather than your Gene Stealers in most cases, because people see, hang on a minute, this gigantic monster's just gone halfway up the table in one turn. That's a problem.
Yeah. The next one is what you like especially, and what everybody should be doing with Hive Guard. Use this stratagem at the end of your shooting phase. Single-minded annihilation. A Tyranid infantry unit from your army can immediately shoot again. This is massive. Now, I've done this with Devil Gaunts, and it was I killed Magnus with this.
That's probably the second best unit to use it on.
Yeah. The first, of course, being Hive Guard. Can you run Hive Guards in Unit of 9?
Unfortunately not, Harry. The maximum unit size for Hive Guard is 6.
But still, having 6 Hive Guard fire again, especially if you're on Hive Fleet Kronos rerolling the 1s.
Yeah, with a strength 8 gun that ignores cover and is -2 D3 damage.
See, everybody raves about the Impalicans. Don't get me wrong, I like Impalicans. I think they're very good. Phil has done the maths backwards and forwards multiple times, and he prefers shock cannons because of the mortal wound against vehicles.
See, but not everybody plays vehicles.
They don't, and obviously shooting and not needing line of sight, especially in hyper-competitive environments such as ITC, where you've got a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, and of course ground floor ruins block line of sight, then Imperial Cannons is probably the way to go. But absolutely, hands down, this, and I'm going to skip to the one beyond this, Pathogenic Slime are probably the 2 best stratagems in this book.
Yeah, there is a lot of good stratagems in this book as well. So it is sort of very, you are spoilt for choice in this book for stratagems.
Yeah,
definitely.
So Pathogenic Slime, when a Tyranid monster from your army shoots, increase the damage by 1. Now, there is a lot of choice that you've got here, right? So obviously monsters, you've got Exocrines. Who doesn't want a Strength 7 -2 damage 3 weapon? With what?
You've also
12 shots, is it?
And if you can put 2 on, that's 24.
No, sorry, the Exocrine, it's 6 shots and then it gets another 6 for not moving.
6 shots, but if it doesn't move, it can then shoot again. Now, a lot of people used to say, well, you have to declare all 12 shots at once. No, that's not how it works. You shoot your first 6 shots, and then when it comes around to shooting your Exocrine again, it's treated as a separate shooting attack.
Mm-hmm.
So you then reallocate to a different target if you wish.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you otherwise, because that's incorrect reading of the rules.
Of course, another good thing to point out for this one is probably the Flesh Borer Hive from the Tyrannifex. Obviously, shooting twice, 2 damage per Flesh Borer, +1 to wound combined with Scorch Bugs.
Yeah, it'll be, if you don't move, it'll be with 40 strength 5 shots.
Wounded Marines on 2s if you use the +1.
Yeah, Another good contender as well is a double Dakar Flyrant, so 24 strength, 6 shots.
Yeah. Or a Carnifex with enhanced senses with double flesh borer
Devourers, yeah.
Devourers with brain leech worms, and the Bioplasma.
Bioplasma could be a good one, but the thing that annoys me with Bioplasma is the random roll for attacks.
Yeah. But obviously, you know, Devourer's doing 2 damage. That means you're killing Primaris Marines, you know, for each failed save, which is massive.
There's quite a debate about this stratagem as well, about when you can actually activate it. Now, my reading of it is it doesn't actually state at which point in the shooting phase that you actually have to activate it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because stratagems are reactive, they're quick, they happen instantly when you declare that you've used them. So, I've seen it being argued that you can wait until your opponent fails their saves and then go, okay, you failed a lot of saves there, bang, pathogenic slime, 2 command points.
I see that, but then obviously the way the Games Workshop rules work is technically you are supposed to roll 1 dice at a time before allocating wounds, but obviously everyone plays fast dice. It's just a natural way. So I think they should change it to say at the start of your shooting phase before when you select a 200 monster to shoot. It needs changing.
Yeah, it's the whole argument as rules as written versus rules as intended.
Yeah. We've got Grizzly Feast. Use this stratagem in the morale phase. Select a unit of Ripper Swarms or Horror Specs from your army. The unit must add 1 to any morale test taken whilst they're within 6. It's like what we mentioned earlier. There's so many armies at the minute that they just ignore leadership. It's incredibly situational.
The reason why this particular one is situational, because it's on 2 units that are rarely within 6 inches of an enemy model anyway. Because Rippers, you just want as objective grabbers, so you'd want them far away from any trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And the Harris Specs will get shot off the table turn 1 anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it, for me, probably one of the worst stratagems in the book. I mean, if it was something like a Morlock, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Sporefield.
This is actually more useful than it appears, because I actually used this before the current beta rules.
Right.
And I found it one of the few ways Tyranids could deal with scouts dropping.
Yeah.
So taking up all your zones to deep strike turn 1. So what I did is I saved up 60 points for my reserves, and then I'd play this stratagem for 3 command points. It's very cost heavy for command points, but if they're gonna drop scouts right in front of you so you can't deep strike, it counters that, because then you're going into a situation where you've got to roll off to see who drops the Spore Mines first or their scouts. So it gives you a chance, and that's what I like about it. It basically secures your space.
Yeah, definitely. We'll gloss over the rest of the standard ones, but we've got Invisible Hunter, which lets a Lictor retreat, shoot, and charge gain. Very handy for character hunting with Lictors. Power of the Hive Mind is cast another psychic power, which, again, most codexes have.
This is actually quite a common one played as well, especially if you need to finish something off with that extra Psychic Scream or Smite.
Yeah.
Very useful power.
And of course, in Tyranid Army, you've got options all over the place with psychic powers. Pheromone Trail, let's just move on from that one, eh?
Yeah, it's another silly Lictor one. You don't really need it.
And the fact that you need reinforcement points and stuff as well. They totally screwed that one over. We've got Death Frenzy. When a Tyranid character is slain, the Hive Mind compels it to make 1 final attack. Immediately shoot as if it was your shooting phase, or fight as if it was your fighting phase before it is removed. A lot of other codexes do have access to this, and I always forget to use the Harlequin equivalent of this.
See, my fun with Death Frenzy is using it with Old One Eye.
Yeah.
So I'll charge Old One Eye into something that I know he'll destroy, but then I know the counter charge will destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
So then I know this Death Frenzy will activate him again and will destroy them back. I've actually removed 600 points of Raven Guard in one turn of fighting with this stratagem and Old One Eye. Very, very. You could do the same thing with Swarmlord as well.
Yeah.
Very potent stratagem if used the right way, and it does totally catch your opponent off guard.
But couple that with the next one, Ferocious Appetite. Reroll all failed wounds for that model until the end of the phase for 1 command point. Until the end of the phase, which also means when you attack again when you've been killed.
Yeah, so if you fight twice as well, it will apply for the second fight as well.
You would either get Death Frenzy or you would get the fight again. Which one is it?
Yeah, it was
Adrenaline Surge.
One, yeah.
It's worth noting though that Adrenaline Surge actually works on the whole unit. So obviously you could have a Jinx-Stealer unit fight again.
Yeah, Adrenaline Surge is 3 command points, but when you use it correctly, it can seriously win you the game there and then.
Yeah.
The thing is with Voracious Appetite as well, it doesn't have to be a character. You can just use it on a generic monster as well.
Yeah. And of course, Adrenaline Surge can be the whole unit. We've got a couple of other ones. Digestive Denial, strip a piece of cover. Deny a piece of terrain, a cover save. Handy against Marines.
Against Raven Guard, fantastic because it's before the game begins. You can spam Digestive Denial if they decide to split their army into 2 castles.
Yeah.
Very good stratagem. Another one that I think is really good that I hinted at when we was talking about the High Fleet traits is the Enemy Below. This is the High Fleet Jormungandr stratagem, and this is where you can pull all sorts of shenanigans in deployment. Basically, for 1 command point, whenever you're deploying Raveners, a Morlock, Trigon or Trigon Prime, for 1 CP, you can add a unit with them in the tunnels.
Yeah.
It basically what that does is it reduces your drops, so it increases your chances of getting that +1 to go first as well.
Definitely, and obviously with Tyranid, you're going to have probably quite a lot of units.
Yeah. So you can essentially get a brigade and have like so few drops. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Another cool trick I've done with Jormungandr is I've done the usual deployment with the Trigon, because the Trigon and Trigon Prime can take a unit with them underground anyway, but they have to be infantry. No, sorry, they have to be troops choices. The High Fleet Jormungandr stratagem allows you to put any infantry unit along with them. So what I've done is I've put the Broodlord in there with them. So you're instantly getting up the table with your big blob of Genestealers and the Broodlord supporting them behind to give them the hitting on 2s in combat. Very good.
Yeah. The Behemoth one uses stratagem when a Behemoth unit from your army completes a charge move. Roll a dice for each model in the charge unit is within an inch. For each roll of a 6 or a 2+, if it's a monster, inflict 1 mortal wound on the enemy unit.
This stratagem shines when you're charging in Behemoth Hormigants or Behemoth Termagants into something really tough.
Yeah.
Because yet again, you're going to be averaging 5 or 6 mortal wounds from one of them.
Yeah. The Kronos one, I like this because it's very psychic hunting. Use this stratagem when an enemy psychic attempts to manifest a psychic power within 24 inches of a Kronos unit, not Synapse. Your opponent can only roll a single dice for this test. Oh, look, I'm going to cast Death Hex. Bang. No, you're not, because it's casting value 7.
I was playing someone who was using Dark Angels, and they attempted to cast Mindworm.
Yeah.
I just went, no. It's as simple as that.
How many people are currently crying over Agents of Vex stratagem?
Quite a few.
Right.
This is like the Agents of Vect, but for the psychic phase.
Yeah, and obviously it is Kronos only, but then again, Agents of Vect is only Cabal of the Black Heart only. Obviously, if you get... This is coupled with Shadow in the Warp as well, because if you're within range to get that -1, even if it's casting value 6, they cannot cast it. Because if they roll a 6, -1, 7, they can't get it off.
This stratagem becomes really, really useful is if you're running Biovores in your list in Kronos, because you can be like, okay, turn 1, 2, 3, 4, you're peppering them all game with Spore Mines. You're not going to hit every time. You are going to generate Spore Mines. And what you can do is you can hide them out of line of sight, so they're not easy to get at and be shot. Because the Biovore is high fleet Kronos, the Spore Mines that come from the Biovores are also high fleet Kronos. The Deepest Shadow doesn't care. It would still work with a bleeding Spore Mine shot from a Biovore. That's how funny it is.
Absolutely.
So good. I've made so many people quite upset with me because I've hidden Spore Mines behind the ramparts of one of the Aquila strong points, I think they're called. And they're totally out of line of sight of all their firepower. And they've gone to, cast something stupid like Death Hex, Mindworm, all the really good stuff, Doom. And I'm just like, the Deepest Shadow, you're not casting it this turn or any other turn for that matter.
Yeah.
It does really frustrate people.
Yeah, very much so. The other one I think that's important is, of course, where is it? Opportunistic Advance. I'll let you take this one.
Yeah. Use this stratagem in your movement phase when you roll the dice for advancing a Kraken unit, other than a unit that can fly. You can double the number you roll and add that total to their move characteristic for the movement phase, rather than following the normal rules for advancing.
Coupled, of course, with rolling 3d6 and choosing the highest, and then doubling it.
Yeah, on Gene Stealers, it is absurd on Gene Stealers. And
when we did try and play at Warhammer World, we only got 3 turns in, I think, but we played Hammer and Anvil deployment, and I deliberately deployed with my Death Watch about 4 inches back from my actual deployment line, and Jim still got a turn 1 charge.
It's very powerful when you use it correctly. Another thing as well is don't be afraid to use it on things like Carnifexes or something really powerful like a Trigon in combat, if you can get it there. Because if you're playing Kraken, you almost always want one of your Psychers to have Onslaught, because it just gives you so much more options to get monsters into combat. And, with Adrenal Glands on a Carnifex, you can essentially move a Carnifex 20 inches in a turn.
Yeah. Massive. Speaking of Onslaught, let's have a look at the Psychic powers. So, Dominion, casting value of 5, pick a Tyranid unit within 36 of the Psyker, and they ignore the instinctive behaviour and automatically pass morale tests. The only time I can see that one really coming in handy, like we said at the beginning, instinctive behaviour is so minor. I think it's if you're out of synapse, then you automatically pass the morale.
Yeah, it's basically if you do take this power on one of your Psykers and you're in a position where a big squad of Gaunts are about to take a really crippling morale, but you've already cast a minion on them, what you've essentially done is save yourself 2 command points. So it can be useful.
Yeah, definitely. Catalyst essentially gives them a 5 up feel no pain. Obviously, if you cast that on a
6
Leviathan unit, it doesn't. It basically replaces the 6 up. You don't get both. But nevertheless, that is massive for keeping a monster or something that you know is going to draw fire alive.
Yeah, it just makes them that much more durable. It's basically the same as disgustingly resilient that Nurgle have access to.
Yep. The next one is the horror. Subtract 1 from the enemy's hit rolls and leadership until the next psychic phase. Very, very handy. If you're going against something that you're a little bit dubious, can I beat it, can I not? This not only protects the unit that's charging in, but obviously any damage you do might hurt them more because of that -1 leadership.
Yeah, the horror for me is one of the best ones. I always put it in on one of my suckers in every list. I never leave home without it. Another quirky thing about the horror is if you're running a detachment of Genestealer Cult and you put Mass Hypnosis on one of either the Magus or the Patriarch, it does stack with the horror. So you could essentially -2 anything that's the biggest threat on the table, essentially nerfing it. And then if you're running the Malanthrope and you've got, your heavies by the Malanthrope, that's now -3.
Yeah.
So Tyranids can really neuter some of the most powerful fire-based units in the game. Like the new Knight with all the guns, the Valiant, you could totally neuter it for a turn.
Yeah.
Or the Storm Surge or a Riptide.
Absolutely.
And there's loads of Imperial stuff from Forge World, like the Spartan, that chucks out loads of powerful shots.
So next up we've got Onslaught, which basically allows you to shoot heavy weapons and move and not suffer the penalty, or you can advance and shoot assault weapons without suffering the penalty. In addition, you can charge even if you're advanced, and this is where James couples it with other stuff, because it allows 2 units. Obviously, if you're advanced, you roll 3d6, pick the highest, and then of course you can still charge a second unit alongside them Genestealers.
Yeah, it helps you get monsters in with your Genestealers to get multiple combats off. Also very versatile if you're running a shooty list as well. You need to move them to grab an objective.
Yeah.
So I found it quite useful when I've needed to move my Hive Guard. The Impaler cannons are heavy. And I'm like, well, that sucks. I'm now going to be hitting on 4s. Hang on a second. Cast Onslaught on them, they ignore it.
Yeah. Paroxysm makes a unit fight last.
I've never really found a use for this.
No.
I think it's the most situational of all the psychic powers, and I've never taken it. Maybe if Slaanesh are dominating the meta, it would probably be a good choice. But other than that, no. It's very situational.
Yeah, Psychic Scream. I like this one. It's basically Smite, but you pick the unit rather than the closest. Oh no, sorry, it is the nearest enemy unit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It just bonuses against Psychers.
Yeah, so basically you can force them not to use a power, and it's an additional D3 mortal wound output on top of Smite without suffering the -1, because it's also casting value 5.
Yeah, and if it hits a Psyker, they have to do a leadership test. And then if they fail, they randomly select one of their psychic powers. They can no longer use that power for the rest of the game.
Yeah, very, very powerful. So we've still got Bio Artifacts and Warlord traits to go. So I haven't really looked at a lot of the artifacts, but there is one that always stands out for me. But you prefer using a different one than me.
Yeah, this is actually the weakest part of the book for me.
Yeah.
The bio artifacts, there isn't many to sort of shout about. It's like I look at some of these artifacts and I think, why is that not generic?
Yeah. Most of them, for example, the Imgal factor gives you a bonus each fight phase, which can change. The Reaper Obliterax on the wound roll of a 6, it inflicts double damage. Whilst that is massive, rolling a 6 to wound, for example, when you've got sort of 4 attacks on a big monster, it's not reliable.
It's gonna turn your bone swords to 6 damage on a 6.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty ferocious. But the problem is the units that do have the Bone Sword Lash Whip are Hive Tyrants. Hive Tyrants, unfortunately, get 4 attacks.
And to be honest, you want some of the other stuff which keeps them alive longer rather than doing more damage.
The thing about the Reaper of Obliterax and the Umgar Factor is at least they're generic. You can put them on any character, regardless of Hive Fleet. Are we going to go for all the generic ones first, and then we'll do the specific ones after?
Yeah, well, the size of Tyrann were Behemoth only. Basically, you get an additional attack where if you roll a 6 to hit, your count is making an additional hit. +1 strength, -3, 3 damage. It's basically Silent Talons. It's alright, you get an extra hit if you roll a 6. You've got 4
this
attacks.
This is one that I wish that was a bit more generic, because the way it's worded is a Behemoth model with monstrous scything talons only. Now that's really odd, because that basically means when you really examine the book, the only model that can take it is a Hive Tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
Now why didn't they just say a Behemoth Hive Tyrant with scything talons? So I think there's something weird there, where I think maybe they intended to be any Behemoth character with scything talons, or any type of scything talon.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way they've worded it is a mistake, because the Scythes of Tyrann on a Trigon Prime would be really good.
Yeah. Your favourite, of course, Chameleonic Mutation. Subtract 1 from the hit rolls that target this model. Very, very powerful, and does stack with Mananthropes.
So you'll most likely you always put it on your Warlord if he's got more than 10 wounds, 10 or more wounds. If your Warlord's going to be lower than 10 wounds, I'd probably take a different bio artifact, but it is still a very useful bio artifact to have, because -1 is big.
The Gorgon 1, Hyper Adaptive Biology. From the end of the fight phase in which you suffer any wounds, add 1 to its toughness for the remainder of the battle. Now, it's really cool, but
it's Gorgon.
You've got that as well, and you've got to take the wound in the fight phase. Why can't it be if he took a wound?
No, it's not the fight phase. It says the first phase.
Oh, first phase. Sorry, my
even if it takes a wound, so even if in the psychic phase you perils and say it would still count.
Yeah. It's good. The toughness in Hive Tyrant, for example, is brutal.
Yeah, you could also have a toughness 9 Tervagon if you went that route. That's also very funny.
Whoa, that is insane. Slayer Sabres for Leviathan.
I don't know. I think this one's pretty pants.
No, 1 additional attack. If an infantry or biker model suffers damage from this weapon but is not slain, roll a d3 at the end of the fight phase if the result is greater than the remaining wounds. Well, sorry, why don't you just pop the stratagem? What was it? The Plasma 1? It's naff.
Voracious Appetite, where 1 CP you get to reroll your wounds anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Slayer Sabres for me is lacking. Because it has to be on a model with twin bone swords. So twin bone swords give you an extra attack anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not a fan of it.
Slimer Maggot Infestation, Hydra only, a model armed with 2 Death Spitters and Slimer Maggots. So you get Assault 6, Strength 7, -1, 1 damage, reroll failed wound rolls for the weapon. It's cool, it's alright.
Yeah, I'd use it if it wasn't in Hydra.
Yeah.
If it was a generic gun, like the miasma cannon's a generic artifact for a venom cannon. I don't see why this gun couldn't have been a generic artifact for the twin death spitters.
Yeah.
The
Balethorn
reroll is
cannon.
actually quite nice.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, the rerolls to wound is actually quite nice.
Yeah.
But it restricts you to Hydra only, which is like, well, that kind of ruins it.
Yeah. So the Balethorn cannon for Kronos, it's okay. It's assault D6, strength 7, -1, 2 damage. Add 1 to the hit rolls when targeting a unit with 10 or more models. Invulnerable saves cannot be taken against this weapon. Hello, Plague Bearers!
Do you remember early 8th edition when Pink Horror spam was the thing?
Yeah.
I loved this gun then.
I bet.
It was just not long after the Codex was released, obviously. And I think it was before the horror nerf. Because I still remember there's a Zinch player at my local gaming group, and he was still doing all that horrible stuff with pink horrors.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find the Baleful cannon very, very useful. a Hive Tyrant hitting on 2s, and it just kills them, because I think they've only got like a 6-up armor.
Yeah.
And a 4-up invuln, but it's like, okay, you get no invuln, and it's -1 anyway. So it's like, okay, totally ignores your armor as well.
That would actually be incredibly horrible against Harlequins.
Yeah, and the Balethorn cannon is something that you could possibly take, because Kronos actually is a fairly good trait.
However, why would you take that when you could take the Miasma Cannon, which is a standard relic, it's range 36, so it's the same range. It's assault D3, so it's half the shots, but it's strength 9, -2, 3 damage, and it's also a flamer. It also always wounds on a 2+.
Except against a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's wounding all vehicles on a 3 anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see what you mean. There could be a situation where you could be greedy and take both if you pay a command point.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The non-crown is increase the penalty range for instinctive behaviour to 30 inches. It's so minor that you're never ever going to take it.
Now, if this was increased synapse to 30 inches,
which it used to be,
this would be taken every time.
Yeah.
Every time. But we've already discussed how insignificant instinctive behaviour is. For me, this is the worst generic one there is.
Yeah.
It's totally useless.
Jormungandr, subtract 1 from the leadership for enemy units within 6. Like, why? Coupled with the Rippers or the Horror Specs, even at -2, it's there's so much stuff that goes around it.
You can combine that with the horror as well. And another good synergy with that is Screamer Killer Carnifexes.
Right.
So they all -1. So there is a way you can actually get a -3 leadership on a unit with a bit of synergy, but it's an awful lot of effort just for -3.
Yeah, absolutely.
One I've used quite a lot is the Maw-Claws of Thyrax.
Yeah.
Now, it says model with rending claws or monstrous rending claws. Now, that's the key bit, monstrous rending claws. They're 0 points, and you almost always take them on a Hive Tyrant. And also, the Broodlord comes stock with monstrous rending claws. So you put the Maw-Claws of Thyrax on a Hive Tyrant or the Broodlord, you only have to kill a single model, not unit, model, in the fight phase. Then afterwards, you can re-roll failed hit rolls in all subsequent fight phases. So with Monstrous Rending Claws, with the Maw-Claws of Thyrax, if you get this off, you're re-rolling hits and wounds.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
It's horrendous considering how good they are. And then is it Toxin Sack, so it's on a 6 to wound, you double the damage, or +1?
It's 1 extra damage with Toxin Sacks.
Horrible. Horrible. So, we've now got Warlord traits, which we'll have a look at, and then what we'll do is we'll actually do a second video, because there is so much and so much variation in the Tyranid Codex, to actually go over the units and how to apply everything that we've already discussed to specific units, because there's a lot, James. There is a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through, definitely.
So, Warlord traits. Alien Cunning at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins, you can remove your Warlord from the battlefield and set them up again. If both players have this, roll off, and the winner decides who sets theirs up first.
Tactically, I can see the value for like the real high-end players, but for sort of like an entry level into Warhammer 40k or a casual sort of setting for it, it's not really that useful.
Yeah.
I think it's better the better you are as a player and at tactics.
Definitely.
It's a very difficult one to get right. Something I've not really sunk my teeth into.
Yeah. One of my favourites, heightened senses. Your Warlord never suffers penalties to their hit rolls. Hello, Alatok Rangers and Alatok Hemlock. Yep. So, Flyer and Double Dacker.
Would that also work against the Colexus?
Oh.
Because I detest that bloody thing.
I don't think so, because it says they still only hit on 6s when they all Overwatch. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the Collector says you could only hit on a 6, whereas this says it never suffers penalties, so if it's at -1 to hit or +1 to hit, then you don't get the penalties. Technically, it's not a penalty, it's a rule against the Colexus.
Ah, that's a shame.
So obviously your Latok's -1, hard to hit -1, they don't affect it. But even then, you do a double Devourer, Flyrant with Pathogenic Slime against a Hemlock, even then, you've got a very good chance of taking it out.
Yeah, I think a Tyrant, even with one set of guns, a set of combat weapons, and being a Psyker, I think usually takes out the Hemlock anyway.
Yeah.
Because it can shoot it. It can blast it with Smite, it can then shoot it, and then it can charge it if it still lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 3, this is a good one. I like this one. Synaptic Linchpin. Add 6 to the range of the Warlord's Synapse ability.
Which you would absolutely stick this on a Hive Tyrant to get 24-inch Synapse.
Or on a non-Hive Tyrant unit, you're getting them to 18. That's still very big. It's a very useful Warlord trait.
Yeah. Number 4, Mind Eater. Each time your Warlord slays an enemy character in the fight phase, choose a friendly Hive Fleet unit within 3. At the end of the phase, that unit can move and advance if you wish, as if it was your own phase. That is so incredibly situational that I can't see it ever being pulled off.
I remember Mind Eater from 7th edition, where if you pulled it off, you get a victory point.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just keep it like that? That would have been, it still would have been situational, but that's something worth it. Getting an extra movement on a unit, it's not as good as like getting a victory point towards your mission.
Yeah. Instinctive Killer. At the beginning of the battle round, before the first turn begins, choose an enemy unit. You can reroll failed hit rolls for your Warlord for attacks that target the unit or any unit that has the same data sheet. For example, all Intercessor squads, all units of Orc Nobs, etc. That's
actually quite useful.
Yeah.
I've used it a few times.
Yeah. Again, Pathogenic Slime with double Devourers on Flyrants. means that you're re-rolling failed hits against those Primaris Marines that happen to be in cover that you've just used Digestive Denial on.
Or those Hellblasters.
Yeah, definitely Hellblasters, especially if you're going up against Dark Angels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one.
Adaptive biology from the end of the fight phase in which your warlord suffers any wounds for the remainder of the battle when inflicting damage, reduce the damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. That means las cannons are rolling that 6 damage, it's 5.
So yeah, it's really useful when you because this you compare with the super adaptive biology relic for Gorgon. So you'll reduce all damage by 1, and you'll get an extra toughness.
Yeah.
And it triggers in exactly the same way.
Absolutely. Which is very, very nice considering them Helver and auto cannons are 3 damage. Suddenly dropping them to 2 means that your Hive Tyrant has to take 6 wounds from them instead of 4.
It's a very good trait.
Yeah. So on to
now we know the specific ones.
Yeah. Behemoth, Monstrous Hunger. Each time you make a wound roll of a 6+ for your warlord in the fight phase, the attack inflicts 1 additional damage. Couple that with Toxin Sacks, and then obviously the was it one of the other relics that you mentioned earlier?
Reaper of Obliterax.
Yeah.
You could have an 8 damage Reaper of Obliterax.
Yeah. But situationally, you've got to roll that 6.
Yeah. The next one, Kraken, 1 step ahead. I've used this one in competitive play, and it really does unsettle the opponent because it makes them think twice when they're going to charge you.
Mm-hmm.
In each fight phase, you can pick 1 friendly Kraken unit within 6 inches of your warlord. That unit can fight first in the fight phase, even if it didn't charge. If the enemy units that have charged or that have a similar ability, then alternate choosing units to fight with, starting with the player whose turn is taking place.
Very handy.
It is incredibly handy because what I would do is, in Kraken, I would make my Broodlord the Warlord, and I'd always keep every single one of my Kraken units within 6 inches. So no matter what they charged, they'd have to get they'd have to be very careful about who's charging what, because I can then interrupt the order of fighting. So it's like having the interruption stratagem where you spend 2 command points to interrupt the fighting.
Yeah.
But I don't have to pay 2 command points. So for me, it's just an absolutely amazing warlord trait to have, because it's a very unselfish trait. It's something that your warlord gives in a bubble. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Leviathan one, perfectly adapted. Once per battle round, not turn, you can re-roll a single hit roll, wound roll, damage roll, advance roll, charge roll, or saving throw made for your warlord. It's alright if you're getting a free saving re-roll. For example, if you get hit by like 4 las cannons, you can command point re-roll 1 and then use this to re-roll the other. But again, like some of the other ones I'd far rather take, like adaptive biology. Just
yeah, it will save you. It will save you 4 CP, 4 to 5 CP every game.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's not the best, but it's not bad.
Gorgon, Lethal Miasma. At the end of the fight phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit within an inch of the warlord, and on a 4+, they suffer a mortal wound. It's okay.
Exactly as the Malamprep.
Yeah. Jormungandr, Insidious Threat. Enemy units never gain any bonus to their saving throws for being in cover for attacks made by your warlord or friendly Jormungandr units within 3 inches of your warlord. That is handy.
That is another unselfish trait. I like traits where it's a bubble that your warlord can give a benefit to your other units. So I've used that one a couple of times. It's quite handy, especially when you're playing somebody like Tau or Guard, where they're just going to castle up and take advantage of as much cover as possible.
Yeah. The Hydra one, endless regeneration. At the beginning of your turns, roll a dice for each wound that your warlord has lost, and on the roll of a 60 regains a wound lost earlier in the battle. It's alright, but
that's something that you really want on a toughness 8 monster with 14 wounds.
Yeah, Tervagon. Or a toughness 9 one if you can pull it off.
You can only get the toughness 9 one though in the Gorgon
artifact. Right.
It's a shame, really. But yeah. The endless regeneration is probably best on a Tervagon, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
definitely. You get to do that every turn, so you're going to be rolling a lot of dice, so you're going to constantly get wounds back over the course of the game. The last one, Kronos Soul Hunger.
Yeah. So, you remember earlier when we said you're at -1 to cast because of Shadow in the Warp. Then you use that stratagem to say, oh, well, you can only roll 1 dice. And if its casting value is 6, you've basically just failed your test because you physically can't get it off. Oh, look, you've just suffered D3 mortal wounds as well.
They've got to be within 18 of your warlord, though.
Yeah.
But if you're using characters like the Neurothrope, you can get the Neurothrope quite close to their lines, but still have more than enough in front of him so he can't be targeted. It can be very dangerous, and it can literally put the fear of God into him.
Yeah.
I've done that to players that are really strong at the psychic phase, and they've just gone, nah, I'm going to skip the psychic phase.
Because they would rather skip it than take the mortal wounds.
I've done that to Grey Knight players, and they seem to be the most salty bunch about taking their psychic phase away from them.
The problem with Grey Knights is, though, they're not in a good place.
Yeah. And that's all the warlord traits. So yeah, I think they've got some really strong ones there.
Definitely, there's a lot of very, very cool combos that you can pull off in between stacking stratagems, obviously 2 or 3 stratagems at once, in particular the ones that we mentioned about fighting again in combat or re-rolling the wounds, combined with some of the relics and warlord traits where you do an additional damage on a 6 and things like that. There's a lot of good stuff in there. A lot of potential combos mixed in with, of course, the High Fleet stratagems, High Fleet adaptions and stuff as well.
Yeah, there's just a million ways to play Tyranids, and there is no right or wrong way. Just pick your favourite bugs, put them on the table, and pick a High Fleet and Warlord trait that matches, and just go and devour your enemies, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So we're going to call it there for this video, but obviously check out the next video. We will be going through each of the units in the Codex, explaining what High Fleet adaptions and upgrades we think work well with them, and any combos that we do see, like the, of course, Neurothought that we've just mentioned there as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Like I said, please go and check out the rest of the channel, and of course the next video in the series as well. James, thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Thank you for inviting me, Harry. It's been a pleasure to go through this book with you.
No.
And I look forward to going through all the data sites.
Not a problem. So see you in the next video, guys.
See you in the next video. Goodbye.